Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So, today we have this, Alexei Panshin's Rite of Passage, winner of the Nebula Award in 1969, which is why I bought it, actually. I was like, let's see some books that won Nebula Awards that I didn't read when I won Hugo Awards. Oh, there's one, I'll grab that. This was like the earliest one that I hadn't read. Babel 17 is on there, and I haven't reviewed it yet. But yeah, I read it so long ago I don't even know if I remember it. But all right, so in 2198, 150 years after the desperate wars that destroyed an overpopulated Earth, man lives precariously on 100 hastily established colony worlds, and in the 7 giant ships that once ferried men to the stars. Mia Havero's ship is a small, closed society. It tests its children by casting them out to live or die in a month of trial in the hostile wilds of a colony world. Mia Havero's trial is fast approaching, and in the meantime, she must learn not only the skills that will keep her alive, but the deeper courage to face herself and her world. Yeah, so the way it works, these ships are traveling around, they stop at colony worlds, they trade technology for raw materials, and this girl lives on the ship. And essentially your graduation from school is to be dumped on a colony world for 30 days, and you have to survive. And there are survival training courses. They're part of school. They involve hunting a tiger at some point, because there apparently are, they keep tigers on the ship just so they can hunt them as part of this training. These ships are huge. They are essentially big hollowed out asteroids that were used as colony ships. Hence what the back cover says. And so the book actually goes through is this girl's kind of early life, her travel through the survival school, her being dumped out of colony world for 30 days, and then kind of the aftermath. That's the thing. And one of the things is that early in the book, her father is going down on a trading mission and takes her with to a colony world. And that's what's happened. They just landed, and that's where we're going to read from. The horses had already been let outside and were being held there by Mr. Tubman. Standing beside him was an officious-looking man in a tall hat in which was placed a great wilted white feather. At another time, he might have been funny. There were 2 children with him, a boy and a girl, both somewhere near my age. We had sat down in what must have been the main square of the town, and there were ranks of people yelling and staring up at us from either hand. It made me feel on display. The sky was low and gray above us. The yellow bricks of the square were wet and shiny, and there was a warm, damp breeze. The band was directly in front of us, all of the band members dressed in dark green uniforms. They played enthusiastically, loudly that is, but badly. I was looking all around at this, but Daddy took my arm and said, "Come on. You can gawk later." We started down the ramp, and all the people in the square increased the volume of their noise. I didn't like it and started to feel very nervous. I wouldn't like being yelled at by large numbers of people in any case, but this was all the more discomfiting because I couldn't tell from the noise whether they were friendly or not. Whatever tune the band was playing became indistinguishable and simply added a small contribution to the general hubbub. Daddy and the officious-looking man shook hands. Daddy said, "Mr. Gennaro, it's good to see you again." The man said, "You timed things well, Mr. Havaro. The rain stopped here less than an hour ago, though I won't guarantee that it will stay stopped." Daddy nudged me forward. "This is my daughter, Mia. I believe you've already met Mr. Tubman and George Fahonen, my pilot." As I shook hands, I took a good look at him. He had an eager-to-please manner that I didn't know how to take, and I couldn't get any clue from Daddy's face or tone. Gennaro indicated the boy and girl with him. "These are my children, Ralph and Helga. When you said you were bringing your daughter, I thought she might like to meet some children of her own age." He turned on a smile and then turned it off again. The boy had dirty blonde hair. He was just a shade taller than I, but much more squarely built. The girl was also squarely built and about my size. They both said hello, but not in an overwhelmingly friendly way. I said hello just as cautiously myself. "That was very thoughtful," Daddy said to Mr. Gennaro. The man said, glad to do it. Anything to keep up goodwill, ha." The people in the band continued to make noise. "Shall we be going?" Daddy said. "Ah, yes. Mr. Gennaro said. "Children, mind your manners." Daddy didn't say anything to me, but simply gave me a sharp look. Mr. Gennaro mounted his horse, and Daddy and Mr. Tubman swung up on theirs. The band, still playing, backed off enough for them to pass through, and they clattered off and out of the square. The band followed after, still playing loudly and tinnily, and a good portion of the crowd trailed them. I said, "Why is everybody following after Daddy?" "Your father is a celebrity," George Fuhonen said in an ironic rumble, standing just behind me. I hadn't been speaking to him, just voicing my thoughts, but I was reminded that I had determined not to speak to him ever again, so I moved away a little. A section of the remaining crowd pressed forward toward the scout ship, bent on getting a good close look at us. George looked out at them with no particular sign of pleasure, as though he'd like to shoo them away. "Stay here," he said to me. "I'll be right back." He walked up the ramp to the place where the 3 crew members were standing. They were lounging in the mouth of the ship and getting a big kick out of the crowd. When George came up, they said something that sounded like a joke and laughed. George didn't laugh. He shook his head irritatedly, and motioned them to go inside. "What do we do now?" the boy, Ralph, said to his sister, and I turned back to look at them. "On the ship we have such long lives and low population that you never see brothers and sisters closer than 20 years apart. Never as close together as these 2. All the kids I know are singletons. I don't know what I was expecting to see, but except for Bill, this brother and sister didn't look much alike at all. I had thought they would. In books they always do. Either that, or exactly like their long-lost Uncle Max, the one with all the money. Helga had dark hair, though, not as dark as mine, and it was quite long, hanging down to her shoulders and tucked in place with combs. She wore a dress with a yoke front. Her brother wore long pants like those Daddy had put on to wear today, and a plain shirt. They had both obviously done some grooming for this little ceremony, and it made them look as stiff as their manners. So, this is what you're going to expect from Rite of Passage, right? Is you're going to expect a realistic and kind of sluggishly paced exploration of a little girl's feelings about kind of her life aboard this ship. And so there's a lot about her interaction with her peer group, with this one kind of antagonist, like this boy she has an antagonistic relationship with, and then kind of her entire peer group going through the survival training, and then becoming adults. And there's also a lot about kind of the way the people on the ship feel about people who live on planets, like they have a derogatory name for them, and she finds out that people on the planets have the same kind of feeling, that they feel that these people on the ships are hoarding technology that is rightfully theirs because it's technology that came from Earth, and that they are originally Earthlings. And so they call them grabbies because they just show up every once in a while and trade sparingly technology for raw materials. And so there is at least an imagined class system that exists, right? People on the ship live, and they live vastly different lives. The people who live on the planets are at the whim of kind of nature and have to, deal with what the planet gives them for their living. And the people who are on the ships have to limit their population growth. They live incredibly long lives because of their access to all the technology that made the ships possible. So yes, they're vastly different societies and cultures of people, and their interactions are sometimes are hostile. Sometimes because of the difference between and those things are they are laid out in the novel in a very organic way, so that you understand. That they make sense. They make sense. These are the kind of feelings that people would have, in a situation like this. Because at some point, the initial colonists who agreed to leave the ship, their descendants didn't make that decision. So they might look back at the ship and feel hostility. Like, that is the thing. That is a thing that would definitely happen. So, that's kind of, are there things? Yeah, I mean, are there conflicts? There are several. There are tons of conflicts. Like, she ends up getting in a fight with that girl and that boy, and they tell her she's a horrible person, and she says they're horrible people, and, like, right, all this class culture, like, kind of comes out in the open. And then, she goes down for her rite of passage and has to survive for 30 days. And one of the things is that there are 2 recognized strategies that are kind of assumed to... there are 2 terms for strategies during the rite of passage that people use. One is called being like a turtle, and the other is called being like a tiger. And the way a turtle works is, the turtle strategy works, is you go down for your rite of passage and you hide for 30 days. You do all the work you need to do to survive, and then try to obscure your location, and then in 30 days you you activate your beacon, and you get picked up. Tiger goes out and tries to interact with the environment, kind of bend the environment to their will, and stay on their feet. And that's what she decides to do in her rite of passage. And there's a pretty high mortality rate for people who go down to planets. I think they talk at one point like 42 go down and 7 don't come back. So I mean that's like 25%. I think when I was reading it, I figured out it was about 25% of kids don't survive being dropped off on these planets. And it's exciting, right? It's exciting, the idea of somebody who has never been off of the ship where kind of everything is provided, being just dropped on this planet, and then like things happening, just having to survive. And it makes you think about whether, at least it made me think about, could I do that? If you just took me, if you told me, here, learn, you have a year to learn what you want to learn, but at the end of that year, what I'm going to do is take you and drop you off in the middle of Siberia. You'll figure it out, we'll pick you up in a month. Could I do that? Could I have done it at her age? No. Could I do it now? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends. It depends on everything. Even somebody who is perfectly equipped for something like that might not survive, right? We see that every day. Experienced mountaineers dying on mountains because, storms come in. Or anything like that. So, yeah, it's the tension is already there before you put somebody on a planet for a month, because alien environments, things you're not familiar with, and survival training in general is a thing that is out of the element of most normal people. So Rite of Passage, Nebula Award winner, 1969. I really enjoyed it. It's about 250 pages. The pacing is pretty slow, but it covers a ton of ground. For 250 pages, there's that initial trip to a planet, and then all of her years of schooling, and then her 30 days on a planet, and then there's an epilogue. So for 250, this is a tightly packed book. And I absolutely, it's a coming of age story, obviously. It's literally about a rite of passage that turns somebody into an adult, so of course it's a coming of age story. But I liked it. I found it, I was pleasantly surprised. It was, it's good sci-fi. It was a good and enjoyable novel. I would, if somebody asked me if they should read it, I would say, yeah, I think you probably should. I think you will enjoy it, because it's not a hard read. It's not, it's one of those science fiction stories that is not as interested in wrapping your mind around crazy science fiction concepts. It just gives you some basic science fiction concepts for a science fiction world, and then tells you a very human story. And if that's what you're into, if you don't want to try to wrap your head around warp drives or anything, this is a great novel for that. It's just going to tell you the story of a girl becoming a woman, essentially, and learning a lot about herself and humanity while she's struggling to survive. And going to school and things like that. All these things that shape us as young adults, are kind of, framed into the story very nicely. So, I really appreciated it for that. I liked it, and was not disappointed that I read it. So, that's the 1969 Nebula award-winning novel, Rite of Passage, by Alexei Panshin. So, when we come back next week, it'll probably be Discworld stuff, because again, I have an exhaustive pile of Discworld books, and if I don't review Discworld books, we will not have anything to review. That's not true, but, there's 14 of them that I've read that I haven't reviewed. So, so next week probably Discworld, and then some other things. So thanks for watching, I appreciate it. Bye everybody.